A woman was drinking alone in a bar, and her name is Doris. In the bar, there was also a man named Nick Escalante, or better known as Nick Wilde, who worked as a bodyguard. After that, Doris's boyfriend, Osgood, came to her. At that time, Osgood told Doris that he had received a promotion at his job, which required him to move to another city. Osgood then invited Doris to marry and live together, but unfortunately, Doris rejected him and did not want to settle down with him. Suddenly, Nick approached them and teased Doris. Nick grabbed Osgood's hair, which turned out to be fake. Doris was scared and asked Osgood to get out of the bar. When they were in the parking lot, Nick came again. This time, Osgood was very angry, and then he beat Nick until he fell. Doris, who saw this, was very impressed with Osgood. Even though Osgood had thin hair and was ordinary, it turned out he was a very tough man. In the end, Doris agreed to marry him and go with him to another city. On the other hand, there was a woman who was dumped in front of the hospital in a dying condition. Then, the woman was found by a nurse. When they checked the girl, she was in a very critical condition, and she mentioned Nick's name repeatedly. The next day, Nick came to his office, and he was visited by a client named Cyrus Kinnick. Cyrus admitted that he was a rich gambler and wanted to hire Nick as his bodyguard. At first, Nick was a little doubtful of Cyrus. However, because Cyrus kept insisting, Nick finally agreed. After that, Nick stopped by his favorite small restaurant, and he met Osgood, who beat him up last night. In fact, it turned out that Osgood was Nick's friend, who asked Nick to pretend to be a bad guy so that Osgood would get Doris' attention. Osgood also gave Nick $10,000, but Nick only took half of it because they were good friends. When Nick entered the restaurant, the waiter greeted and welcomed him warmly. They looked very familiar. Then Nick told the waiter that he dreamed of living on Corsica Island in France. Nick really wanted to live in peace there because he was bored with Las Vegas. However, to live quietly there, Nick would need $500,000 to survive for 5 years, while the money he has now is far from that number. Not long after that, Nick got a message from his friend, Holly. Nick was asked to come to his house, and it turned out that Holly was the woman who was dying in the hospital yesterday. Here, Holly told Nick everything about that night. Holly, as usual, served her clients at the hotel. But when she came home, she met 3 men in the elevator, one of whom was short and acted like a boss, while the other 2 were big men, and it seemed like they were the bodyguard. After that, they invited Holly into the man's room, and then Holly was forced to please that pervert. Worst of all, Holly was beaten by the bodyguards, so she wouldn't report it to anyone. After that, they dumped Holly in front of the hospital. Now, Holly asked Nick to look for information about those 3 people, because she wanted to sue them legally. Nick, who knew that the hotel Holly was referring to was the place of the mafia, immediately refused it because he no longer wanted to deal with the mafia. Nick wanted to focus on pursuing a peaceful life on Corsica Island. But in the end, Nick couldn't bear it, seeing that his friend had been raped, so he finally agreed. After that, Nick went to the hotel through the back road. He met his old friend, Millicent, who happened to work there. Nick asked Millie for help to find out who tortured Holly at the hotel where she worked. Then Millie asked Nick to meet her at their usual place to eat. Shortly in the afternoon, they met, and Millie said that the boss who abused Holly was named Danny DeMarco, and the other 2 people were his bodyguards. Danny was a son of the Italian mafia, who was quite influential. Therefore, Millie told Nick not to get involved in trouble with them. That evening, Nick was seen working with his client, Cyrus. Nick took Cyrus around Las Vegas, but Nick looked confused between focusing on his dreams and leaving his current life, or going back to dealing with the mafia. Nick then realizes that Holly won't sue them, so he would have his own revenge. Finally, he decided to leave Cyrus alone at the bar. Then Nick went to Holly's house and told her that the person who abused her was named Danny DeMarco. Holly immediately asked Nick for help to get revenge on Danny. But again, Nick refused. But here, Holly revealed Nick's past, that in the past, Holly had helped Nick because he was in a down situation. Finally, Nick agreed because he felt he owed Holly. Soon after that, Nick immediately went to Danny's place. When he got there, Nick told Danny's men that he had business with Danny regarding a woman, and he was ordered by Baby. So, Baby was the most respected mafia boss in Las Vegas, After they heard Baby's name, they immediately invited Nick to come in to meet Danny. After meeting with Danny, Nick said what he wanted to do. Danny thought that Nick was someone sent by Holly who would fraud him. Danny suddenly pointed a gun to Nick, but Nick didn't want any chaos to happen. Therefore, he was about to leave. However, Danny said that he would teach a lesson to Nick, who had dared to bother him. Then Nick tied the three of them up, and after that, he invited Holly to come. Without talking much, Holly took out big scissors from her bag. Of course, this made Danny scared. Then he offered money, which was in his drawer, so that Holly would forgive him. Holly took the money and gave it to Nick, but Holly still wanted to get revenge. She cut Danny's capital part of the man a little, making him groan in pain. His two bodyguards couldn't do anything. After that, Nick and Holly left. When they got outside, they divided the money. Holly decided to leave Las Vegas that same night because she realized that Danny would not let her live if she was still in that city. Nick also thought the same, but before that, Nick stopped by at a casino first, hoping to earn more money. After arriving at the casino, it seemed that it was Nick's lucky day. He kept winning the games at the casino. Meanwhile, Cyrus was also there, and he saw Nick keep winning until the dealer felt confused. That night, Nick managed to double the money from $250,000 to $560,000, which means the money was enough to fulfill his dream. Before trading his coins, Nick chatted with Cyrus and told him about his dream of living in peace on Corsica Island. Soon after that, Nick walked to the exchange counter to exchange his coins. But suddenly, he canceled it and was about to bet all his coins so he could double them again. Nick told Cyrus that if he used his money now for his dream, then after 5 years, he has to return to this place. So, Nick would try to double his money again so he could live in peace longer. In the end, Nick bet all his money in one game. But unfortunately, in that game, Nick experienced absolute defeat. Nick then went to the toilet and there he regretted his decision. He got drunk until he passed out. When Nick woke up, he was already in the VIP room of the casino. Cyrus told him about his purpose in coming to this city, which turned out that he was not a gambler. He was a rich developer at the age of 19. Cyrus came to the city to learn the meaning of courage because he felt like he was a coward. He came to Nick to learn to be a brave man. Cyrus then invited Nick to go on an adventure to various cities and countries, and Cyrus would cover all the costs. However, Nick refused. He came out and sat on a bar stool. Then someone came. He was ordered by Danny to beat up Nick. Not long after that, the police came to stop them. The next day, Baby invited Nick to a place. Baby said that there was a problem that had to be resolved, because there was a son of the Italian mafia who admitted that he was already robbed by Nick. Nick was then taken to a room to undergo trial, and Danny was already there. If Nick was proven guilty, Baby would kill Nick right then and there. Danny continued to corner Nick by saying that he was robbed by Nick, while 2 of his bodyguards were shot dead. However, Danny continued to hide the matter of his abuse to Holly. Here, Nick asked 2 questions. The first question is why he had to kill people using weapons, because Baby knows that Nick can easily kill someone without ever using a firearm. He can even kill someone with an ashtray from a distance of 5 meters. Secondly, Nick told Danny to take off his trousers and show his genital, which was injured because of his own deed. Baby finally concluded that the person who had robbed Danny wasn't Nick. Danny felt that Baby didn't help him at all, so he immediately left and continued to threaten Nick. Baby finally got an explanation from Nick that the 2 bodyguards had been shot dead by Danny himself, because he had been humiliated by a woman in front of his own bodyguards. Then, Baby let Nick go. The next day, Nick went back to the small restaurant he used to have breakfast. Cyrus was also there because he knew Nick would definitely have breakfast at this restaurant. Cyrus said goodbye to Nick because he was leaving this city. Cyrus thanked Nick because he had learned a lesson from him that everyone has their own fears. And now, what we have to do is believe in ourselves and recognize our own identity, then everything we are afraid of might not be so bad. Cyrus gave Nick a gift of a plane ticket to Corsica Island and a check for $500,000. But Nick wasn't too happy because after this, Danny would come and kill him. Not long after that, Danny came with his men. Then Cyrus stood on the table and pretended to be a crazy person to divert their attention. Then Nick hid on the roof, carrying a spoon and bread knife. There he heard Danny ordered his men to kill Cyrus and burn down the restaurant, so that Nick decided to fight Danny and his men. In the end, Nick succeeded in killing them all. After that, Nick was about to leave, then Cyrus approached him and continued to force him to accept the gift. Nick was continuously forced by Cyrus, so in the end, he received the gift. Nick immediately went home and packed up, leaving Las Vegas and went to Corsica. The end.